Good morning from the far north. Actually, it's not Monday morning, it's Sunday evening. I have a route so tightly scheduled that I need to head out tonight. This trip is a bit out of sync with my internal clock, but I just made myself a coffee and I'm ready to go. There's actually quite a lot going on in the yard because the first long-haul drivers are preparing for their tours. I have 650 kilometers or 400 miles ahead of me, and I'm looking forward to empty roads and empty chargers. I'm loaded with 2 containers, and I'll check them one last time to make sure everything's secure, and then the next week as an electric trucker begins. Driving at night is so relaxing without all the traffic. When you think about it, it makes a lot of sense for electric trucks to drive at night. During the day, we have an overabundance of renewables because of solar power, so trucks can charge during the day and drive at night. It would be cheaper and more sustainable, but the downside is the health issues that come with night shifts. So we might have to wait a few more years until semi-autonomous or fully autonomous systems are available. Somebody asked how I manage without adaptive cruise control in this Iveco. Honestly, it's pretty manageable. Trucks usually maintain a steady speed since they all use cruise control, so at most, every few kilometers, I might have to adjust the speed up or down a bit. It's really not a big deal, but I do understand that these features aren't just for convenience. They're about safety, especially for those rare moments when you're distracted or something unexpected happens. Having a truck that automatically brakes can make a big difference. This truck doesn't have that feature, and while it does have an emergency brake assist, it's not designed to bring the truck to a full stop or entirely prevent an accident. It's more about reducing the damage. If the vehicle in front suddenly brakes, I still end up hitting it, just at a lower speed. Apparently ACC will be added through an over-the-air update, but we'll see. The truck also only has buttons for the standard cruise control, but there is a little truck symbol on the left. Out of curiosity, I pressed it. And if you look in the rearview mirror, you can see the side marker lights turning off. Even the top marker lights turn off when I press it. This makes absolutely no sense. I can't think of any practical reason why you'd want to do that. I've never seen that in a car, truck, or anywhere else. Maybe it was just a bug they couldn't fix, so they added it as a feature instead. It's 3 a.m. and I've reached my charging stop in Hohenwarsleben. There are Ionity chargers here and a bunch of Allego chargers, but some of them are not working, which is never a good sign. But my charger works, and this stop lined up perfectly with my route. I managed to cover 371 kilometers or 231 miles in 4.5 hours, which is a lot more than usual thanks to almost no traffic. I expected that some trucks would already be on the road now, but there were only 2 or 3 free spots. I arrived here with 1 minute of driving time left, which was perfect timing. What's not so perfect though, is the charging performance here. The charging output is fluctuating a lot. It started around 320 kilowatts, then it continued at 240 kilowatts, but every so often it drops to 173 kilowatts. This has happened a few times now, where it drops temporarily and then returns to maximum power. I'll check in with my contact Adrian at Ionity, who can provide me with the charging curve so I can see if the issue lies with the truck or the charger. Sadly, as a user, you don't get much information, so it's hard to tell. But while the charging isn't perfect, it's not a big deal. I'm still ahead of schedule. Hats off to Ionity for sending me the charging curve despite the issues. It turns out the cooling system for the cable wasn't working properly, which caused the fluctuations in charging power. This place is actually really interesting. There's Allego, Ionity, a few superchargers, and the real highlight, a remodeled Shell gas station. They removed the fuel pumps and installed these chargers instead. It's not truck compatible yet, but it's still impressive that they're doing this. Huge respect to Shell for taking this step. They could have just placed these chargers somewhere else, but they chose to put them front and center. Hopefully, they'll be up and running soon. Curiosity got the best of me, so after my 45-minute break, I tested the other charger. Now it's actually charging at full power. Unfortunately, this one has different software, so I can't see the ampere and voltage, but I can estimate. Based on the 129 kilowatt hours it charged in 22 minutes, that averages out to about 351 kilowatts. So this confirms it was the other charger causing the slowdown. The Iveco was charging steadily at 350 kilowatts, and at around 65%, there was a slight dip, likely due to the battery cooling kicking in. From around 90%, the Iveco gradually reduced the charging power. As for why the first charger showed more details, it turns out the first station had technology from Tritium, while the second was equipped with ABB's tech. That's why the interfaces differed. Big thanks to Ionity for the helpful info. Holiday travelers are now arriving at Ionity, and check out this Ioniq 5 with the roof box mounted backward. It looks odd at first, but it's actually more aerodynamic. The ideal aerodynamic shape resembles a teardrop, wider at the front and getting thinner towards the back. The same principle applies with the roof box. So if you see one like this, give them a thumbs up. They know what they're doing. The day is done. My containers were unloaded by crane, but I had to wait for a while since only one crane was available and several trucks needed unloading. The containers also had to be placed in different spots, so the crane had to keep repositioning, which took quite a while. It got close with my shift hours again, but I managed to wrap up just in time and park here. It feels like I'm in pole position since there are Aral Pulse charging stations just ahead, so I can charge again in the morning. Now I have a pretty long break since I don't load until 8 a.m., and it's currently 1 p.m. That late night drive yesterday has paid off, and I get to rest a bit longer now. Now I'm taking a walk with my dog, and then I'm looking forwards to my bed. Good morning, everyone. I spent the night at a truck stop near the Polish border. Yesterday I crashed into bed around 2 p.m., woke up briefly at 8 p.m. for dinner, and thought I'd take a short nap before setting off again. But I slept straight through and woke up at 4:30 a.m., but still on schedule. Lesson learned though, always set an alarm, no matter how short the nap, because you never know how tired you are. The Iveco is charging at one of the Aral Pulse stations and was around 22% when I started, so it'll take about an hour and a half to fully charge. I've already made use of the time to shower, grab some breakfast, and have coffee. And I would have to do these things regardless if I would drive a diesel, so at least I can use the time to also charge. From here, I've got a 2-hour drive west to pick up a load, and then head towards Hamburg. The charging performance is perfect. It's been charging for an hour at constant 300 kilowatts. But with an electric truck, I'm having a new issue that normal EVs don't have. Right now, I'm using Ellie to charge. Ellie is a charging card provider, and they have a blocking fee. So even though I'm charging and generating a lot of revenue, after 90 minutes, I have to pay a penalty for blocking the charger. They have a different time limit for AC charging, and you don't get the blocking fee from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., which makes sense in residential areas. The issue with the blocking fee is that not all data gets exchanged between the charging card provider and the charging point operator. This means they often don't know if the truck or car is still charging or just occupying the spot, and they only get that information later. So they had to come up with a solution to prevent charging stations from being blocked. They most likely analyzed the data and found that after 90 minutes, most charging sessions are complete. But what I don't understand is that ENBW, who is a charging card provider but also has their own stations, also charges a blocking fee at their own points, even though they can see exactly whether a car is charging or just blocking a spot. I hope that sheds some light on why blocking fees exist. For me at the moment, it just means I need to start a new charging session after 90 minutes. Another bug I found is that you can't leave on the lights when locking the truck. This is particularly annoying when you want to leave the parking lights on at the charging station when it's dark. But on this channel, we don't just show problems, but also solutions. So here's the trick. It's a bit like back in the day when cars didn't have central locking. You lock the car from the inside, close the door, and the lights would stay on. Just remember to keep the key in your pocket. This way you can leave the truck safely while it's charging. I've just picked up my new load, and here's something special. It's oversized. The frame is 2.6 meters wide, which is why I had to take the sidewalls down. They're now stored in the storage compartments. Typically, a truck is 2 meters 55 wide, but it can be up to 3 meters wide with cargo. So I'm extending and adjusting the side markers right now. Once the width is over 3 meters, it becomes a special transport and you need a permit. And this is another volume load, weighing only around 6 tons. I'm on my way to Hamburg, but I won't arrive until around 6 p.m., so I won't be unloaded until tomorrow. I need to take a break in about 11 minutes, and there's an Aral Pulse location just 6 minutes away, so it lines up perfectly. I'll stop there, charge up a bit, and then head over to that truck stop in Hamburg where I've been a few times before. I can top off the battery, stay flexible for tomorrow, and spend the night there too. I'm at 41% battery, so I only need to charge for about 45 minutes before moving on. I saw through the charging apps that 3 of the 6 charging spots are currently taken. A couple of videos ago, I had that Audi e-tron driver charging at 97%, and funny enough, there's another e-tron here. I was about to kindly ask if he could maybe move, but turns out he's leaving on his own. Now I can park nicely on the edge. The truck charged for 35 minutes, but not at full power. Then the session stopped, and after that, nothing worked. I couldn't even start a new charging session remotely. So I called the hotline, gave them the charger number, and asked them to restart it. I'm definitely the unofficial charging station tester in Germany. I had them reset the power, but it cut out again after 15 minutes. When it stopped, the station automatically unlocked, and because the cable was under tension, the connector fell and made a little scratch on the truck. You would never expect something like that. This station and I are definitely not becoming friends. I made it to the charging park in Hamburg Moorfleet with 10% left. The range was fine, even with the charging issues. Up until now, I've always parked the wrong way at the charger. Now I'm parked correctly, but even like this, the layout is very tight for 3 trucks. I used to park the other way because I'd come from the highway, charge up, and then head straight to the truck parking. Otherwise, I'd have to make an extra lap around the charging park. So, really, I was just being lazy. I'm charging the truck to full now and will do my 11-hour rest break before moving on tomorrow. As for what I've got loaded, I don't even know what it's for. Maybe it's for animals or a construction site. So far, I've only found Aral Pulse charging stations without overhead arms, while Shell Recharge always goes for the arms, but without cooled cables. I wondered if you couldn't order both options together. Well, here's the proof. This is the full package. They ordered it all. A CHAdeMO connector and 2 cooled CCS with overhead arms. If they could do 400 kilowatts, it would be perfect. But I think this is still an older generation model. Construction site traffic is always a next-level experience since there's always a certain degree of chaos. But some people manage to keep everything organized, knowing exactly what needs to be done. Construction site traffic also means city traffic, so I'm maneuvering this huge rig through Hamburg during rush hour. But it's all manageable and fun. I also asked what the frame I was transporting was for, and it turns out it's for building a tower. I delivered the top sections, and another truck brought the bottom sections, which will be filled with concrete to create a stabilization column for the subway in this construction project. Now I'm heading toward Leer again, to a tree nursery we regularly deliver to. I'm not using the open trailer for that, but a colleague will be meeting me there, and we'll swap trailers. I'm currently between Hamburg and Bremen. My driving time is about halfway used, and my charge is at 78%. But since I have a bit of buffer, I'm topping it off now. I'm taking a lunch break, so it's a good chance to make full use of this time to keep things flexible for the rest of the day. Disconnecting the trailer is super quick now, maximum 5 minutes, maybe even less. I positioned the truck over 2 charging spaces, so others will automatically park elsewhere. If it were busy, I'd stay with the truck and move if needed, but it's quiet and half an hour should work out fine. I've just arrived at the loading site, and the trailer is already halfway loaded. Perfect timing. A colleague brought the trailer with a diesel DAF and has been a big help with the loading. Now we're just doing a quick swap, and then I'll get going. I'm now heading toward Mönchengladbach, but I've already gotten the info that I'll be arriving too late to unload today. To stay flexible for tomorrow, I plan to charge again tonight. The truck's not completely empty, but since I've got the time, I want to take advantage of it. Option 1 is heading to the Aral Pulse charging park in Düsseldorf, where there are truck-compatible parking spots. The downside is I can't sleep there, so I'll have to find another place to park for the night. Option 2 is the Hilden charging park, which I've always wanted to visit. It's popular with EV drivers, and they have Tesla and Fastned chargers. There are 5 superchargers with 250 kilowatts, and I'm curious if they are compatible with my truck. I've arrived, but I haven't started the charging process yet. The back area has a 3.3 meter height restriction, but that only applies to the rear beam. Theoretically, I could drive the truck all the way back, but since the V3 supercharger cable is relatively short, I would have to block a stall. I'm not sure if the other beam is 4 meters high, and if I can't get past it, the cable won't reach. I've heard that a semi-truck has charged here before, but I couldn't find any pictures, so I don't want to risk it. Instead, I decided to plug into a Fastned charger. I don't have a specific subscription, and as you know, I'm not the biggest Fastned fan. Interestingly, with Shell Recharge, it costs 79 cents per kilowatt hour, which is even more expensive than the direct payment price of 69 cents per kilowatt hour. These prices are criminal. But besides that, the infrastructure here is great for cars and even for RVs. There are AC charging points everywhere, and they're very affordable. There's even a dedicated area for e-campers. They can park there and access both charging power and land power. Plus, there's solar power on top of everything. I'm back in Düsseldorf and just tested the middle charger. There's still space in the back, so someone could charge if needed. However, 3 semi-trucks with trailers definitely wouldn't fit here. I still have about a half-hour drive to Mönchengladbach. But before I start searching for a parking spot and end up parking in a weird place, I thought I'd just ask here. The lady was super friendly and said I could park in the curve, as there's a large space and enough room. Plus, it's free. Sometimes you just have to ask kindly. I'll be spending the night here, and we'll be all set to go tomorrow. I like the idea of starting my day with a short commute, since it gives me some time for myself. I just wanted to check on the truck and see how full it is, and a Volvo FH Electric arrived. The driver only spoke English, but he told me that the truck is new, and he's only been driving it for a few days. So far, he's happy with it, but he has had a few error messages. He drives about 400 kilometers a day, and needs to charge once in between, although I think he could do it without a recharge in the summer. Theoretically, you could charge here at night when the car wash isn't in operation, but you would only think that if you've never driven a truck, because reversing out of here is really tough and I'd only do it in an emergency. It's now 3 a.m. and I specifically set an alarm because in my last video I mentioned that the charging spots are supposed to be kept free for Amazon trucks at night, and I really wanted to see what happens. Well, nothing. The only truck I can see is the one from yesterday, which has probably come back because he couldn't find a parking spot. The driver only spoke English, but the sign here is only in German. This clearly shows that heavy-duty traffic is international, and you can't get very far with signs in just German. The minimum should definitely be English, and that needs to be adjusted, because otherwise, as you can see here, drivers unknowingly block the chargers. My day started off successfully. I was already at the first unloading point, and even though they were supposed to start unloading at 9 a.m., they took me in just after 8, so that was great. What was also interesting is that they had a sign at the front where suppliers were supposed to check in, and the sign was in 11 languages. That's how it should be done, because drivers come from all over Europe, and without them, things just wouldn't work. I'm on my way to the second unloading point now, and I'm not sure how the rest of the day will go yet, because the return trip is still being worked on. Another topic I wanted to talk about. In the last video, I mentioned that the Iveco has a vampire drain. I've since learned that this is linked to the cell temperature. A cell with a higher temperature generally has a higher voltage, and when the temperature drops overnight, the BMS recalculates things, which can lead to a 1 to 2% loss. The power isn't actually gone, it just wasn't there in the first place. I don't know if other vehicles always show the value for the cold battery, or if they calculate for the warm battery, assuming it will eventually warm up. Unfortunately, the Iveco doesn't show the battery temperature, but its sibling, the Nikola T REBEV, shows the battery temperature after a certain software version. We're all waiting for software updates on this vehicle, so maybe that will come soon. I'm done unloading, but I don't have a return route yet. And you always want to get the best route, so sometimes it takes a little while. I'm allowed to park here, and now we're taking a little walk. I could already head north and maybe recharge. But as we've seen in the previous videos, charging often isn't necessary. And if I get a route where I have to drive 4.5 hours anyway, I'll just charge at the end. Making yourself more stress really isn't necessary. There's no need to rush or charge all the time. Another topic regarding driving and rest times. My 29th second trick is actually illegal. It can be analyzed when the vehicle was driven and how fast, and they could theoretically see that I was still driving. But for me, it's a workaround to manage things because without charging on the go, electric trucks won't work. It's my temporary solution and my risk. But we definitely need better solutions, because blocking charging stations doesn't help. The reality is, someone knocks on your door in the middle of the night and wakes you up. The future will definitely be truck charging parks where you can charge and sleep at the same time. But until then, we need a temporary solution. Maybe it could be combined with the state of charge. If a truck is over 90% charged, it is allowed to drive for another 5 minutes to park. I got the info that the return trip won't happen as quickly, but that's no problem at all, because 15 minutes away was the Aachener Landshut rest area with 4 Ionity charging stations. There's only a BYD Seal U charging right now, but now I'm going to show you a gift I received. It happens quite often that I park the trailer somewhere for the weekend and sleep somewhere else, and then it's a bit concerning if it's just left by itself. Actually, in the company history of Nano Janssen, only one trailer has ever been stolen, but we don't want to risk it, so I now have a lock for it, and I'm going to test it live with you now. I would have actually preferred it to be more noticeable, in yellow or red, so that people see it and don't even try. But if you leave it on and then drive into it with the saddle plate, you damage it. So I have to somehow mark it in my cockpit or put something on the display so I don't forget that I locked it. My workday is almost over. I've driven back north and am at this Errol charging park where I've been several times before. The Volvos often come here to charge on the side, and if I drive up to the third station, there's still enough space for the cars to drive out and the Volvo could still charge. I got a bit lucky because this Alpitronic station works and delivers the full 300 kilowatts, but the other CCS port is broken, so no one can charge there anyway. Jackpot! Alongside all the electric mobility and everything around it, the lifestyle of a trucker is also really important. First, the issue of nutrition. It's pretty difficult to eat healthy, especially since I don't have a fridge and I rely on fast food, which is quite a challenge. I want to find out what needs to be done and how to adjust my diet to eat healthy. The second point is physical exercise. I've introduced a very simple rule. Whenever I have access to a shower, I will do at least 15 minutes of exercise beforehand. That's why I put on my running shoes and am running around a bit now. This way, I have some basic activity in my day, because otherwise, the lifestyle of unhealthy eating, lack of exercise, and sitting in the car all day will eventually take a toll on me. I'm already at the next loading point, and I want to show you something that needs to be said, but no one talks about it. I've got a typical load with stones here, so it's a heavy cargo weighing just under 23 tons. The problem, however, is the rear axle load. There is a special regulation that electric trucks can be heavier, but the rear axle is still limited to a maximum of 11.5 tons. The issue with this Iveco is that the batteries are relatively heavy and positioned between the axles. Additionally, the electric motor, the e-axle, and the transmission are mounted directly on the rear axle. This is a good and simple concept in theory, but it results in less than optimal weight distribution. So, when transporting such cargo, the truck already reaches its limits. It's still okay for now, but we've spaced out every single row we can, and at the back, it's doubled up to ensure as much load as possible rests on the trailer, so the rear axle is balanced accordingly. The Scania has a more traditional architecture. The batteries are positioned on both sides, and there's a drive shaft going forward, with the electric motor roughly in line with it, which feels like the old world of diesel, but it works very well in terms of weight distribution. An important aspect of all this is that the Iveco uses the densest energy battery technology, NMC batteries. And you can already see that despite the large battery and NMC technology, the truck still reaches the limit on the rear axle load. And Mercedes thought for their e-Actros, let's use the same concept, but use LFP batteries instead. LFP batteries are more sustainable as they don't contain rare earth elements. They can be charged to 100% more often, and the usable capacity is higher than in the NMC batteries. However, LFP batteries are heavier. While you don't notice that much in a car, it's noticeable in a truck, and the Mercedes truck is 1.5 tons heavier than the Iveco and another 2 tons heavier than the Scania. And you can't ignore the fact that all this extra weight is on the rear axle, which inevitably limits the truck's capacity. One could almost say that Mercedes' approach is a bit of a PR stunt. You really have to know what you're transporting. For volume-based transport, this is not an issue at all, but for everyday use, it is a limitation. You may have regular customers and routes, but when finding return trips, you end up transporting whatever you can find. These are often jobs where the weight limit is 24 tons, and if that's not possible because of the axle loads, you're at a disadvantage as a business owner. I did not drive the e-Actros yet, but we've ordered 5 of them, so it is relevant for us. And the German YouTuber Carmaniac made a video with the e-Actros a while ago, and when they drove it, they only loaded it to 40 tons, and even then, the rear axle was overloaded. But we don't want to complain, we want to work on solutions. So the question is, what would the best concept look like? One solution would definitely be to add a second axle. There are even trucks that have an additional axle and the same length for heavy-duty transport, but that's not possible because of the battery. You could also move the axle to the rear, but then you'd have the problem that the truck would be much longer. This means you can only use a shorter trailer or need a special one, and you definitely can't transport standard trailers. With the Iveco, there's space under the cab, so maybe the batteries could be placed a bit further forward and load the front axle a bit more. But with the e-Actros, it has to be said that even when almost empty, the front axle is nearly at its limit. So, until we improve the energy densities of the batteries, this will remain an important issue. I just met Tatiana. She has driven over 50,000 kilometers with her FH Electric. She told me that she gets her destinations provided and then does the charge planning herself. Just like me, she sometimes has to uncouple the trailer, but she says that it's very doable. The FH Electric only has a range of around 300 kilometers or 186 miles, and the charging power is limited by the 400-volt system. So, if you drive long distances with such a truck, you truly deserve respect. With this Iveco, it's way too simple. Now we're fully loaded, and I can show you how much power this truck can draw. At peak, it was 926 kilowatts, which is about 1,250 horsepower, actually more than the manufacturer's specification. And one final thought on the weight of the batteries. There's the Chinese company NIO, and they have a battery swapping system with a small 75 kilowatt-hour battery and a large 100 kilowatt-hour battery. Both have the same size and roughly the same weight, but the 100 kilowatt-hour battery uses NMC cells, while the smaller one uses LFP. Maybe this could be an inspiration for trucks. For heavy loads over long distances, NMC batteries make more sense, while LFP is better suited for medium and short-range trips. And with that, my week comes to an end. This week, I drove about 2,600 kilometers or 1,600 miles, and next week, I'll be heading through the Kassel Mountains to Augsburg. And here's a quick update on the open area solar system. There's been quite a bit of progress. This week is over. I wish you all a wonderful weekend, and we'll see each other next week.